It's great to see you all. Thank you for joining us for the Stretch and Strengthen exercise class. Today is day 4, or week 4 rather. This class is our low impact and low intensity exercise class. It starts in a seated position, then we move to a standing position, and then back to a seated position again. So the structure of the class today will be very similar to our previous 3 weeks. I know that we have a few new people joining us today. So if you are new, welcome, and please follow along. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask in the chat box or use the raise hand function. Oh, sorry to hear that Bruce isn't feeling well. That's okay, no problem at all. Thank you for coming on anyway. The exercise classes are recorded, so if you miss a class or if you want to redo the exercise class, you're welcome to do so. The recording is on YouTube. So if you're not sure where to find the YouTube channel's link, you can email me, and I will put my email in the chat box here. You're welcome to drop me an email, and I can always send you the link for the YouTube channel if you want to have a look at the class at a later date. So as I mentioned, this is our low impact and low intensity exercise class. So there will be lots of opportunity for breaks. So if you're new to the exercise world in general, don't worry, this is quite a gentle way to start. Now, I do have a chair. I don't know if you can see back here. You can use any chair you got at home as long as the chair is stable and it doesn't have wheels at the bottom, because we don't want the chair to roll away from you as you're doing your exercises today. And ideally, you want the chair to be without armrests, because as we get moving today, you just don't want to be hitting your arms on the chair by accident or hitting your sides and things like that. But of course, if you only have a chair with arms, that's okay. That's absolutely fine. Just be mindful as we go about in our class today to just watch out for any injuries that might occur with that. So for today's class, it will run similarly to our previous classes. We have some new exercises we'll be doing today, but you might see some familiar ones as well. So there'll be something there for everybody. So today's week 4, we have 4 classes after today, and that will be the end of the series. So without further ado, let's get started. Oh, I forgot to mention, we are in the webinar platform, which means that your microphones are automatically muted. But if you do want to ask a question, you can either use the chat box function or you can use the raise hand function, whichever one works for you. If you don't want to type, you can use your voice. If you don't want to use your voice, you can type. Or of course, you're always welcome to give us a call or drop us an email at any point if you have any other questions. Okay, let's get started. So we're starting in our chair. Now, we're starting in our chair, and just like last time, I had mentioned that when we're sitting in our chair for exercises, we want to make sure we're sitting up nice and tall over our hips, and we're sitting at the front of the chair. So you can see my bottom's at the very front of the chair. And the reason for that is because if you're sitting all the way back here and you're leaning back into the chair, or even if you're not leaning back, but your bottom is all the way to the back of the chair, you're going to have a really tough time moving because there's just not much room for your hips to kind of move and your knees to straighten and pivot and all of those things. So it's better if you were to sit upright using your tummy muscles, pull yourself up off the back of the chair, and then you use your muscles to shuffle yourself forward so that you're in a more sort of active position, ready to go position at the front of the seat. So you have lots of room to pivot, to move your trunk, to lift your legs, all of those kind of things. Okay, so when we're sitting today, unless I tell you to slouch, we're going to be assuming we're always sitting at the front of the seat, nice and tall. Okay, let me face you again. So starting off, we're sitting at the front of the chair, nice and tall. We're going to lace those fingers together, push those palms forward, and we're going to reach those palms all the way up. Oops, you can't see me, let me move back. Reach those palms all the way up to the ceiling. Big stretch like you're yawning. And from here, we're just gonna pull the arms over to one corner of the room, back up to the middle, big stretch. Pulling over to the other corner of the room, big stretch the entire time. Back up. And then we're gonna bring the arms forward, little twists on the spot. Keep stretching as far as you can. Other side. Stretch, stretch, stretch. And then we're gonna open those arms back, stretch the chest as wide as we can, and bring those arms down. Let's do that again. Interlace those fingers, push the palms forward, stretching up towards the ceiling, stretching over on a diagonal, and onto the other diagonal, big stretch. Bring those arms forward, big stretch still. Rotating on the spot, stretching those palms away from you, like you've got a light in your palm and you're shining the light to the all the different walls of the room. And then we're opening the arms up, stretch the chest and lower down. Let's do one more. Lace the fingers together, stretch the palms over in front of you, reaching up to the ceiling, big stretch. Over onto the diagonals on either side, big stretch, big stretch. Back to the middle. Arms in front of you, still stretching away, rotating on the spot here, stretching those palms away from you as far as you can. And then we open the arms, stretch the chest, and we lower down. Okay, so this is now a time where we are going to slouch in the chair. I'm going to turn sideways. So we're going to move our bottom back in the chair, and we're going to lean back into the backrest of the chair. We're slouching here. We're going to bring those arms up behind the ears like so, making sure your elbows are pointing out to the side. So we don't want the elbows forward. We want the elbows out to the side. And then from here, you're going to stretch up and over the back of your chair, just being careful not to actually tip the chair too far back. We don't want to fall, but you do want to arch up and over such that you're stretching your chest and your upper back. Make sure you're breathing. And we come back up. Let's relax the arms for a second. We're going to do that one more time. We're still slouching in the chair. Bring the arms up behind the head. And then we're going to reach those elbows out behind us, or sorry, beside us. We want to make sure the elbows are not pointing forward, but they're pointing to the side. And then we're arching up and over the back of the chair. Big stretch. Enjoy the stretch here of your chest and your upper back. Breathing the entire time. And coming back up, drop the arms, using our tummy muscles, sitting up nice and tall, shuffling to the front of the chair again. Now from here, we're going to float those arms up beside us, big open fingers, open palms, and we're going to go into a side stretch here. So we're bringing our shoulder down towards our hip, and our arms are reaching in opposite directions. You should feel a nice stretch on the side of your trunk. Now, really important that both hips stay down in the chair. So we don't want one hip, we don't want to do this where this hip is now lifting off the chair. We want to keep the hip grounded, both hips grounded down heavy into the chair. Coming back up. Let's drop the arms for a second and then we float them back up again. Same to the other side. Make sure the hip that you're kind of stretching away from is not lifted off the chair. You want to anchor it down into the chair. Heavy hips, equal weight distributed on those hip bones. And coming back up, let's drop the arms. We're going to go into rotational stretch. You're going to take your hand, hold on to the opposite knee, and then your other hand's going to wrap around the back of the chair, grab hold of anything you can at the chair. We're sitting up tall, and we're going to pull ourselves around into a rotational stretch. So it's like you're looking at the back wall here, and you're trying to lengthen your spine as you're doing the stretch. Try to keep your feet where they are. Don't let the knees buckle or don't let the knees kind of swivel. Keep them where they are. Make sure you're breathing through all the stretches today. And let's release. We'll do the same thing on the other side. Take your hand, grab hold of the opposite knee. The other hand's going to wrap around the back of the chair. Sit up tall, grow taller through your spine, and then pull yourself around into a rotational stretch such that you're looking at the back wall. Keep your legs where they are. Remember, don't let your knees fall to the side. Keep them anchored. Nice rotation through the spine. And we'll release. We're going to bring those legs nice and wide, and we're going to go into inner thigh stretch. So you're going to sit up nice and tall, and you're going to hinge forward at the hips. Let me turn sideways so you can see me. Legs wide, nice and tall through the spine. Keep the spine tall and straight. You're going to hinge at the hips. Hinge at the hips forward. And if you use your hands to push those legs out even more, you'll feel a stretch on the inner thighs. So hold that stretch here for a few breaths. If your spine is curved, you might not feel it as much. So keep your spine nice and long if you can. I know this one's a little tough. Good, and we'll come back up. Keep your legs where they are, so keep them nice and wide. We're gonna go into a bit of an upper back strengthening exercise. So just like before, we're sitting up tall and we're gonna hinge forward at the hips. Maybe not quite as far as when you were doing the inner thigh stretch, but we're hinging forward at the hip and we're gonna float those arms up in front of us like so. So our spine is just kind of on an incline. We're not doing this, right? We're not tipping forward as far as we can. We're kind of just on an incline. Arms floating up in front of us. From here, we're going to pull those elbows back and squeeze our shoulder blades together, both arms, pulling the elbows back, squeezing the shoulder blades together, holding for a few seconds, and then bring those arms forward. Make sure you're still on a tilt angle. Same thing. Pull those elbows back, squeeze the shoulder blades together, and bring the arms forward. Let me show you from the back for a second. Pretend I'm hinging forward. I'm not actually going to hinge forward from this position because you won't be able to see me. But pretend I'm hinging forward. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm squeezing my elbows back. I'm squeezing my shoulder blades together, and I'm holding that position and then releasing forward. So from the side, exactly the same thing, except we're on an incline forward. Try that again. Pull the elbows back, squeeze the shoulder blades together, almost like you're trying to pop a button off the front of your polo shirt if you've got one on, or if you don't, imagine you do, and those little buttons at the front, it's like you're trying to pop the buttons off. You're squeezing those shoulder blades together, pulling the elbows back, and bring the arms forward. Let's go again. We're going to go for 9 more. Pulling those elbows back, shoulder blades squeezing together, and forward. We got 8 left. Squeeze those shoulder blades together, pull the elbows back towards each other. Make sure you're still on incline. Here's 7. Pulling those elbows back. Make sure you're breathing. 6 more. Pull those elbows back, shoulder blades together. Last 5. Make sure you're on incline, you're breathing. Elbows high, not here, elbows high. 4 more. Pulling the elbows back. Squeeze the shoulder blades, trunk nice and long. 3 more. Last 2. Elbows high. Last 1. And let's relax for a second here. Okay, we're going to do that again, but this time, rather than both arms together, we're going to do one at a time. And it looks like this. We're hinging forward a little bit, so we're on an incline. Arms floating up in front of us. We're going to pull one elbow back and we're going to rotate our spine at the same time. So it's like I'm pulling my elbow back and I'm kind of looking the direction my elbow is pointing. And then I'm bringing my arms forward. Same to the other side. I'm pulling the elbow back and I'm squeezing the shoulder blade still, but I'm kind of looking at the position that my elbow is in. I'm looking the direction my elbow is pointing, and I'm coming back forward. And again, join me here. Pull the elbow back, keep the spine long if you can, And forward. Other side, you're letting your gaze follow the direction your elbows pointing. You're still on that incline to really allow yourself to have some more difficulty in the shoulder blade retraction here. Keep going, squeezing the shoulder blades as you're pulling the elbow back. Make sure you're breathing. Let's do 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, last one. And drop the arms and relax there. And turning back around to face you. Let's let those arms hang nice and heavy by our side. And we're just gonna roll those shoulders back. Rolling the shoulders up to the ears and back behind us a few times. And then we're gonna do the same thing the other direction, rolling the shoulders forward. Nicely done. You're going to place those hands on your hips. We're going to go for some ankle movement now. Let me move back a tiny bit here so you can see me. Okay, we're going to lift the heels off the floor as high as you can, lower down. Lift those toes and foot off the floor as much as you can. So from the side, it's like this. You're lifting your heels up as high as you can, and you're lifting those toes up as high as you can. Okay, so we're just warming up the ankles, heels up, then the foot is coming up. Okay, keep going. Try to sit nice and tall as you're doing this. Try not to let your body move or twist or slouch as you're doing this. Ideally, you want to imagine if I covered your legs with a big blanket and I couldn't see your legs moving at all. I couldn't see your ankles moving. And I only saw you from the waist up. It shouldn't look like you're moving at all. So we don't want to be like this. I'm exaggerating. I'm sure no one's doing it like that, but you get what I mean. Nicely done. Let's see if we can do opposite directions now with the foot. One side you lift up the heel, the other side you lift up the toes, and then we're going to switch. Lift the heel on one side, lift the toes on the other side, and switch from the side, and switch. Maybe I'll do it on the diagonal so you can see, and switch. So one side is going to be lifting up the heel, the other side is lifting up the toes, and we're going to keep switching for a second. And just like before, you want to sit up nice and tall. So you want to think about that analogy of if I covered your legs with a blanket and I could only see your trunk, it shouldn't look like you're moving at all. So we don't want to be like this or leaning to the side. We want to make sure we're nice and steady, nice and still. Good, keep going. Few more, nice and tall. Really use this opportunity to warm up those ankles. Good, and rest for a second. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to the knees. We are going to sit up nice and tall, and we're gonna straighten our knees such that you're showing the bottom of your foot here. And I want you to imagine there's a light coming out the bottom of your foot. And from here, keeping your knees straight, you're going to draw a gigantic circle as big as you can, 5 in one direction, and then you're going to go 5 in the other direction. Let me turn sideways for a second. So you can see I'm straightening the leg and I'm showing you the bottom of my foot. So imagine you're sitting this way. I'm just turning sideways to show you. You're going to draw a circle, or sorry, 5 circles in one direction, and then 5 circles in the other direction. And you can see that my knee is straight. So this movement is very different to this. Right? I'm not doing this. I'm straightening the leg and I'm drawing the circle. Okay, keep going. So you keep alternating. Then we're doing the other leg, 5 in one direction. Keep the knee nice and straight if you can. 5 in the other direction. Sitting up tall, imagine there's a sort of book balancing on your head. You don't want to be like this. So a lot of the time it's very tempting to do this with our legs, but we want to try to keep ourselves nice and still. And you're using the thigh muscle here to help you with this movement. I'm exaggerating. I'm sure no one's actually doing it like this, but I just want you to be mindful of your trunk position here. Oh, I've lost count. I don't know if I did 5 on each side there, but that's okay. Keep going. I tend to chat a little bit too much in these classes, and then I always lose count. So if you're watching this recording again and you're counting my circles and it's not 5, please excuse me. But you do want to do 5 when you're doing this at home. 5 in each direction. And then switch directions when you're done the 5. Yep, and then we do the other leg again. Sitting up nice and tall, so not like this, nice and tall. Okay, we'll stop there. All right, I'm gonna turn sideways. We're now going to do our standing exercise. So we're gonna move from a seated position to a standing position. Now, in previous weeks, we've been practicing our sit to stand technique. If you're new today, don't worry, we'll go over it. Now, when we're doing our sit to stands, it's really important that you start at the front of our seat. So we never want to be trying to stand up when we're in this kind of position because you're so far back in your seat. All of your weight is here. Your weight is here for your base of support. Your feet are here. So the distance that you have to travel to try to pull your center of gravity forward over your base of support is quite far. So it's very difficult. So if you're standing from this position, more often than not, we're kind of like this, right? Because our bottom is so far back, our weight is all the way back in our hands and we can't get up. So then we end up having to pull with our arms to then push ourselves up. Or we do this, where we push our legs against the back of the chair to then try to pull ourselves up. So we want to avoid that, okay? We want to start at the front of the seat and you want to try to get your center of gravity over your base of support in order to properly stand without falling over. So we're going to lean forward, almost like someone's grabbed our shirt and they're pulling us forward. So they're pulling your center of gravity forward over your base of support. And once your center of gravity is balanced on top of your base of support, you're going to push the floor away from you as hard as you can, squeezing your bum cheeks together in order to stand up nice and tall. And you're going to do the same thing in reverse. We're bending our knees, sticking our bottom back, but our chest is coming forward. So we're still center of gravity, still balanced over our base of support. And then you're going to slowly lower down into your seat. So with this sit to stand practice that we're doing, we are not going to use momentum. So we're not going to go as fast as we can. We want to do it slower. So we're really controlling it. We want to try to avoid this. 1, 2, and 3. While that strategy may be great for someone who's freezing, but if we really want to practice the technique of which you're using your muscles to actually support you from a sitting to standing position, then the slower you do it, the better, because the more you get to practice your control. Because the whole point of balance is you have the control to be able to keep your center of gravity over your moving base of support all the time, right? So that's essentially what balance is in a basic way of speaking. Of course, balance is more complicated than that, but if we're just talking about not falling over, then we're talking about our ability to keep our center of gravity over our moving base of support at all times, okay? So join me here. Let's practice a couple of these sit to stands. So you're doing it nice and slow. You're bringing your center of gravity over your base of support, pushing the floor away from you in order to stand. You're balancing your center of gravity on top of your base of support the entire time. Same thing when you sit back down. You're keeping your center of gravity in the middle of your base of support, and then you lower your bottom down onto the chair. So keep going, keep doing this. Now, if you've done this for a few weeks with me already and you want to try the single leg bias that we did last time, you're welcome to do so. You basically bring one leg a little further forward. So we're biasing the back leg exactly the same as before. You're bringing your weight forward over your base of support, pushing the floor away to stand, whereas the front leg is sort of light on the floor. It's not stomping on the floor. It's light, like you've got eggshells underneath it that you don't want to crush. And then we're sitting back down, sticking our bottom back, Okay, so if you're doing the single leg bias, do 3 on one side, then do 3 on the other side, okay? Keep going. So no matter what version you're doing, keep doing it now. So we're gonna keep repeating it, nice and slow, controlled. Same principle, you're keeping your center of gravity over your base of support at all times if you can. I'm gonna do the standard version and not the single leg bias version, because I know we've got some new folks in the class today, and I wanna make sure you can see what I'm doing if you're getting a little stuck and need help. Nice and slow, nice and controlled. The sit to stand and the stand to sit should be as quiet as possible. We shouldn't hear any plonking down into the chair or anybody pulling up with their arms or pushing the chair back by accident as they're trying to stand because they're leaning into the chair, right? We want to make this as quiet as possible. Imagine you're like PD ninjas. As quiet as possible. Nice and controlled. Smooth movement. Thinking about that idea of balancing your center of gravity over your base of support at all times. Although I say as quiet as possible, I don't know if you can hear my chair squeaking and cracking as I'm doing this. But I'm basically using a very old wooden chair that I've got. It's probably not the best chair to do this on. And my dog, my puppy, is going through a phase where he loves chewing wood of any kind. And so he's, every opportunity he gets, he's been chewing this chair to bits. So that's also why it's squeaking. Keep going. Nice and slow, balancing your center of gravity over your base of support the entire time if you can. If you feel like you really need to hold on to something, that's okay as well. You can have something in front of you, just in case you kind of swing forward a little too far. But I do want you to try your best to think about using the strength of your legs here. Let's do one more. In your own time, do one more sit to stand. And this time you're going to stay standing. Good. You're going to stay standing once you're up. Then we're going to do some standing exercises. I'm going to face sideways to you so you can see my hips a little better. We're going to start with our squatting, our squat practice. So last time we did some squats. And so as we talked about during our sit to stand, we're trying to keep our center of gravity on top of our base of support, which is our feet in this case. So this is what we want to kind of build on. So we're going to do some squatting practice, trying to keep our center of gravity over our base of support so we don't fall back or fall forward or fall sideways as we're doing this activity. So during our standing exercise, please do hold on, okay, if you need to. If you don't need to, that's okay. But we want to stay on the cautious side of things. I don't want anyone to fall, so please do hold on if you need. Okay, so squats look like this. We're basically bending our knees, sticking our bottom back, chest forward, as if we're about to sit in the chair. So same thing, almost like we're about to do our stand to sit, and then we're gonna stand back up. And as I'm doing this movement, I'm doing it nice and slow. And as I'm doing my squatting movement, it's like as I go down, I'm bringing my weight to the back of my feet, so almost like onto my heels. And then as I stand up and squeeze my bottom cheeks together, I'm bringing my weight forward again towards the center of my feet. Slash a little bit forward towards the balls of the feet. So try this here. You're trying to do a squat. You're sticking your bottom back, bending your chest forward like you're about to sit in a chair. Then you're going to squeeze your bum cheeks in together, push the floor away from you to stand back up. And the entire time we're doing this squat, we want to make sure we're staying on top of our base of support. And we're not going like this and falling back, right? But we also don't want to be falling forward as we're trying to do the squat. You want to kind of distribute your weight. You can feel the weight on all the borders of your feet. And then you're sticking your bottom back. The weight kind of shifts to the back of the feet towards the heels, but your toes are not lifting, right? We're just shifting the weight a little bit. And then when we stand up, the weight shifts forward in the feet again. So try this here. Practice your squats. Take your time. I don't want to see anyone go like this too fast. So we're going to Take our time, nice and slow and controlled movement. Really feel that kind of range happening in your hip. You're bending the hip and you're squeezing the hip in. So really feel that in the hip. Squats should really be coming from the hips and not the knees. I mean, of course, it depends on what kind of squats you're doing. There's lots of variations for this, but as a general sense of speaking, for squats, you want to be feeling in the hips, and it shouldn't be the knees moving unless you're doing like a ballet plie or something like that, which is completely different, which you also feel in the hips, but then you get a little bit more strength through the knees. Nicely done. This time, as we're doing our rise from the squat, as we stand up from the squat, we're going to transfer our weight to the front of our feet and go into a rise if you can. You don't have to come that far off the floor. You can just do a little bit of a lift, but I want you to just practice shifting your weight to the front of the feet, and then we go back to shifting your weight to the back of the feet into the squat, shifting your weight to the front of the feet to the rise. Remember, for the rise, you don't have to lift quite as high as what I'm demonstrating here. Just do a lift that's comfortable for you, but the idea is you're shifting your weight to the front of the feet, shifting our weight to the back of the feet, shifting our weight to the front of the feet. So just play around with that weight distribution for a moment, nice and controlled in your squat and rise. Really feel where the pressure is in your feet. Be really aware of your body positioning. Nicely done. Let's do 2 more in our own time. Really feel the weight distribution in your feet moving. And let's rest there for a second. Okay, I'm going to keep holding onto my chair in front. And we're going to go into some hip extension pulses like we did last time. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to lean forward over the chair a little bit, just a little bit. I'm not doing this, right? I'm just leaning forward a little bit. And then from here, I'm going to bring one leg back behind me. Doesn't matter which one, we'll do both. The supporting knee, the leg that's straight, you're going to bend it ever so slightly. And then what you're going to do here with your body on an incline, you're going to use your bottom muscle here, and you're going to lift that back leg off the floor and then bring it back down, but not stomping down. We're just tapping the toe down on the floor ever so slightly, and then it goes back up again. So we're tapping the floor ever so slightly, and it goes up again. Now, it's really important that we're leaning forward slightly, because if we're like this, what I don't want to happen is us go through the back. I don't want us to be crunching through the back. So I want us to lean forward a little bit. So we're using our bottom muscle. And as we're doing this kind of pulsing back behind us, I want us to make sure we're not moving the trunk. So ideally, we don't want to be twisting the trunk. We don't want to be doing this with the trunk because then we're using our back muscles. Imagine you're like a statue. Your body is a statue. The only point of pivot, the only joint you've got is this one right here in your hip, and that one hip. That's the only thing that's moving, okay? Everything else is completely still like a statue. So we're not turning the body, not lifting the back in any way. Everything is completely rigid except for that one joint that's moving. So the leg is not doing this, right? We're not bending the knees. Because you have no knees there. So imagine you have no joint there. The only joint that's mobile in the body is this hip. That's what we're aiming for. Everything else is still as a statue. That hip is the only thing moving. And as you're doing this, you're trying to keep your trunk as still as possible. Harder than it looks, right? When you're thinking about all of these elements, you're keeping your body as rigid as a statue. The only thing that's moving is that hip. Remember, you're tapping the toe down. We're not bringing it all the way in. We're not stomping on the leg. We're just tap, and then it goes back up. Tapping the toes down, and then it goes back up. Nicely done. Let's go for 3 more. 3, 2, 1, and rest for a second. We're going to do the same thing On the other leg, I'm going to turn around so you can see me. We're doing the same thing on the other leg now. So just like before, we're leaning forward a little bit, bring the other leg back. So whichever leg you didn't do last time, you bring that leg back. The supporting leg, you can bend it ever so slightly if you find that the back of the thigh is quite tight. From here, you're going to use your bottom cheek muscle here, and you're going to lift that leg up, then tap the toe down ever so slightly, then lift it back up again. You're keeping that back knee straight, your entire body rigid as a statue. The only joint that's moving is this hip right here. We're not turning the body, we're not arching the back, we're keeping everything still. The only thing moving is this joint right here. Nice and controlled. We're not kicking the leg, right? Nice and controlled. Nothing else is moving. So if we kick the leg, we're going to end up trying to use other parts of our body, like our back, which we want to avoid. Nicely done. Keep going, squeezing that butt cheek muscle in order to help you lift that leg back behind you. 3 more. And let's rest for a second. Okay. I'm going to face you now. We're holding the chair in front of us. Actually, I'll move the chair. Pretend I'm holding the chair in front of me so you can see me. So pretend I'm holding on. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go sideways instead. So we're standing up nice and tall. So unlike before, we're not leaning anymore. We're standing up nice and tall. And you're going to bring one leg out to the side such that your toes are on the floor like that. Okay, you're holding on, or you can hold on sideways, whatever works for you. Standing up tall, just like before, nothing else is moving except for this hip joint, okay? Where you can lean over towards the supporting leg a little bit, and then everything else still is a statue. The only thing that's moving is this hip, and you're gonna lift out to the side. So when you're lifting, we're not turning our knee. You are thinking about the outside of your foot. The outside of your foot is lifting up to the ceiling, then it's coming back down, tapping the big toe on the floor, and then it goes back up again. So this is the only joint that's moving. Nothing else is moving. We're not doing this, right? We're not kicking the leg, moving the body. We're not turning the body. We're not turning the leg. We're getting the outside of that foot, the outside of the foot to go up, and then you're tapping down. So ideally you want to be holding on like that, okay? From the side, the outside of the foot is going up and then tapping down. Okay, keep going. I think you can see me here. Again, just like before, the supporting leg, you can bend it ever so slightly if you like, but it's really important that we're not kicking. We're not kicking the leg up like that. The body's like a statue. The only thing that's moving is that hip joint. Nothing else is moving. This one's a little harder, I know. Let me do it from the side again so you can see. Trying to decide what might be the best angle for you to see this movement. Maybe from the side is not the best. I'll go on the diagonal, maybe that's better. So the outside of your foot is going up and down. So you want to avoid this, right? We're not turning the heel, and we're not turning the toes towards the side we're lifting, but rather the entire outside border of the foot is going up and down, up and down. Let's try the other side. Let's shake it out for a second. Let's try the other side. So just like before, you bring the leg out to the side so that your toe is touching the floor. The entire outer border of the foot is facing out. And then you're leaning over towards the supporting leg a little bit, and everything is like a statue. The only thing that's moving is that hip joint. And same thing, you're just lifting it and tapping the toe down. And as you're doing this, just like before, you want to avoid the heel going out or the toe going out, and you want to avoid that kicking, because as you're kicking, your trunk kind of moves with you. So you want to keep your body in one line, like you're a statue. The only thing that's moving is that one joint. Hopefully that makes sense. Keep going. Do we all hate this one yet? The sideways one is always a little bit harder than the backwards one. So make sure when you bring that toe down, we're not stepping on it. So we're not doing this, right? We want to make sure we're keeping our entire weight on the supporting leg, and then the moving leg, the working leg, is just going up and down. A few more. And let's rest. You can rub out the sides of your hips if you need. Okay, I'm going to turn on the angle. So, as if that wasn't horrible enough, we are now going to add those two movements together. So the one where we lift backwards and we lift sideways, we're adding that together. And here's what it's going to look like. We're still holding on. We're leaning forwards a little bit into the chair, just like we did when we lifted the leg back. We'll bring one leg back. And what we're going to do here is we're going to draw sort of like a rainbow shape, or an upside down U, if you will. So this is the shape that we're drawing with our leg. And essentially, we're going behind us. We're going up and over to beside us, up and over to behind us, up and over to beside us. And as you're doing that, just like before, we want to avoid this. I'm exaggerating. I'm sure no one's going to do it like that. But you want to avoid this kind of pivoting of the trunk, this rotation of the trunk. You want to imagine your body's like a statue, and this is the only joint that's moving. So you really got to use that bottom muscle to help you here. You're going up and over to the side, up and over to behind. And your knee is straight as you're doing this. You're using the hip muscle only as you're doing this movement. And we're not just doing this, right? We're not just swinging it like this. We're lifting up and over, because you're thinking about the upside down U, that rainbow shape that you're drawing with the leg. You go up and over to the side, up and over to behind, up and over to the side, up and over to behind. So this one's a little harder. Don't do it quite as fast. We can go a little slower if you like. But work at a pace that works for you without all of the technique kind of going out the window. We want to really avoid this. I'm exaggerating. I'm sure no one's doing it like that, but you want to avoid that whole kind of movement where you're tucking your trunk into the side. And you don't have to lift your leg very high off the floor. Even if it's barely coming up, that's okay. But I want you to just think about the up and over, because I just don't want us to kind of swing our leg like this. So think about the up and over type of movement. A little bit of standing Pilates almost for you here. Keep going. Maybe I'll turn this way. I wonder if this way maybe you'll see it better. Oh yeah, maybe that's better. Okay, I'll face you now instead. So up and over to the side, up and over to behind. A few more. And let's shake it out for a second. We'll do the same thing on the other side. Turn this way. Same thing on the other side. You're hinging forwards at the hip, so you're leaning forward a little bit. Leg behind you. Everything's like a statue. Nothing is moving except for this hip joint. And we're going up and over to the side, up and over to behind. So think about that upside down U, or that rainbow shape again. Up and over to the side, up and over to behind. Up and over to behind, up and over to the side. I'll just keep moving so you can see the different angles. Whoops, I'm kicking my wall here. Whoops. My chair is very shaky. So remember, nothing else is moving. The only joint that's moving is that hip. Let's do a few more here and then we'll move on. Probably all hate this one already. And let's shake it out for a second. Okay, let's move on. We're gonna do some lunges next. So I'm gonna move my chair out of the way for the moment because you won't be able to see me if I have the chair, but ideally you wanna, if you feel unbalanced, I do want you to hold on to something. Could be beside you, is probably better than in front for you for this next one. Okay, we're gonna do some lunges. Just like before, we talked about keeping our center of gravity over our base of support, and we're gonna keep that going. So we're gonna lunge forward. So we're gonna take a step forward and we're gonna lunge. So a lunge is almost like you're about to kneel on the floor. So it's like you're about to kneel, but you're not actually touching the floor, but you're getting that back knee towards the floor as much as you can. And you can see my body's upright. I'm not leaning forward. I'm keeping my body upright. And then I'm coming back in, same to the other side. I'm stepping forward. I'm lunging down almost like my back knee is about to kneel on the floor, and then I'm coming back up. And think about your body like an elevator. You can only go up and down, not forwards and backwards. And as you're doing this lunge position, if your foot is too close, like if you only step out this far and not that far, if we're like this, it's going to be very difficult to lunge because you can see my back knee is already catching it. It's already stuck. So you almost want to step out further so that you can have the room to actually lunge down like you're about to kneel on the floor. So we're going to keep alternating legs here, keeping your body upright. So remember, you're thinking your body is like an elevator. You're going up and down, but not forwards and backwards. Nicely done. Make sure you're holding on if you need. If you don't need to, that's okay as well. Whatever works for you. We just want to be a little bit safe. Don't want anyone falling in the class. And you don't have to do it the same speed I'm doing either. You're welcome to do it a little slower, and it doesn't have to be quite as deep of a lunge if that's very difficult. So if going down this far is very difficult and you only want to go here, that's okay too. Just keep your body upright. Remember, we're not leaning forwards or backwards. We're keeping our center of gravity on top of our base of support. Nicely done. Let's do two more, and then we're going to move on for a second. We'll come back to the forward lunge in a second. Okay, so we've just done some forward lunges. We're going to do the same thing, but now we're going backwards behind this, which is going to be a little bit more challenging. So just be careful. You can hold on in front of you if you like for this one. Just be careful we're not leaning forward too far. So the reverse lunge looks exactly the same, and it's like this. You step back, and you want the back knee to almost kneel down on the floor. Then you come up and you switch sides. Back knee almost coming down to the floor. Now, really important that when you're doing this, as we step back, you want to make sure you step back far enough that you actually have room to then do the lunge, because sometimes what happens is we take a really tiny step, and because the step is so small, we kind of don't have any room to bend. Or if you have a back to the chair, you end up hitting the chair and there's not really anywhere for you to go. So you want to step back further than you think you're able to. And then you're lunging down such that your back knee is going towards the floor. And just like before, you want your trunk to be upright like an elevator. We don't want to be leaning forward or leaning back. We want our trunk to be in one straight line, going up and down like an elevator, not forward and backwards. How are we doing with this one? Hopefully we're okay. So remember to hold on if you need, but if you don't need to, don't hold on, that's okay as well. And feel free to do this a little slower. Make sure you're still breathing, you're not holding your breath. I know sometimes the backwards stepping can be a little challenging. So definitely hold on if you need. Let's do a few more here. Okay, challenge of the day. So I'm going to move my chair for a second. So we've just done some forward and backwards lunges. We're going to try to put that together now. So make sure you're holding on. For this one, you probably want to hold on to the side. So you don't want a chair in front, you don't want a chair behind because it'll be difficult for you to move. But you can probably hold on to a chair on either side of you if you need. And this is what it's going to look like. We're going to put the two movements together. So I'm going to take my leg, I'm going to do a front lunge like this, and then I'm going to push back. That same leg that went forward is going to now go behind and push back. And then I switch legs to the other side. I step forward, lunge, push back. That same leg that went forward is going to go back and push in, switch sides. So you're going forward, push back to the middle, you go back and to the middle again. We go forward, middle, back, middle. And just like before, you're trying to keep your center of gravity over your base of support. Bring your center of gravity over your base of support the whole time so we're not falling over. And make sure you're holding on for this if you need, but your body is like an elevator. You're going up and down, but not forwards and backwards. You're keeping your trunk upright. Take your time on this. Make sure you're holding on if you need. I don't want anyone to fall over, so please be careful. And just like before, if you can't lunge fully and you can only do a little bit of half lunge, that's okay. Even if it's a little bit, that's okay. Keep going. You're keeping your trunk upright, even if it's just a mini lunge. And we're still trying to not do this kind of forward and backwards movement. And even if you're doing a small lunge, you're still practicing your center of gravity over your base of support, your center of gravity over your base of support the entire time. Let's do a few more. Let's do one more on each leg. And let's stop there. Okay, hold on to a wall or a chair for balance. Let's do a thigh stretch. You have two options for this. Number one, if you are flexible enough, you're welcome to hold onto your foot and pull it up back behind you towards your bottom. Keep your knees in one line. Don't let your knee come out forward. Keep your knees in one line. Pull the foot towards your bottom. Push your hips forward to feel a stretch in the front of the hip and the thigh. Or if that's too difficult, bring a chair behind you. Just like before, you're bringing the foot onto the chair. Your knees are still in line, and you're pushing the hips forward to get a stretch at the front of the hip and the thigh. So whichever version works for you, just hold that for a few seconds. And release. We'll do the same thing on the other side. You can either hold on to the foot, pull it up towards your bottom, knees in line, and push your hips forward. Or if you can't, you're welcome to use the chair behind you, knees still in one line, push the hips forward. And release. Let's do a calf stretch. One leg forward, one leg back. The front leg is bent, the back leg is straight, and you're trying to reach that back heel towards the floor. Keep your body upright. If you can't, you should feel a stretch in that back calf. Really push that back knee straight, reach that heel to the floor. And coming up, let's do the same thing on the other leg. Take your leg back, front knee bent, back knee straight, really straighten that back knee, reach that back heel to the floor. And coming back up. Okay, we're gonna grab our chair and we're gonna have a sit down. So just like before, when you're sitting down, we're doing a nice, quiet, controlled sit, sticking your bottom back, but you're keeping your center of gravity over your base of support at all times to sit. Now from here, I'm gonna get you to sit forward in your chair. You're gonna bring one leg up over the other knee like this. I'm bringing my ankle up over the opposite knee, and I'm going to push that knee down as much as I can to feel a stretch in your bottom. If you don't feel a stretch in your bottom here, sit up tall and hinge forward, and you should feel a stretch in the bottom of the leg that's hiked up. If you can't do this, have one leg straight, the other one you can hook the foot over the knee in a straightened position, and just like before, push that knee down. Okay, or you can have that bottom leg bent, whatever works for you. Stretch that bottom muscle for just a moment. And then release. Let's do the same thing on the other side, foot over the knee, pressing that knee down, hinge forward at the hips. If you can't feel that stretch yet, you should feel it in that back hip. Or just like before, the bottom can be straight if you're not able to hike your knee up that high. Same thing, whichever one works for you. Okay, let's do a trunk rotation stretch to finish. We'll take our hand, hold on to the opposite knee, other hand wraps around the back of the chair, sit up tall, pull yourself around into rotational stretch such that you're looking at the back wall, nice and tall. And release, same thing to the other side. Take your hand, hold on to the opposite knee, other hand wrapping around the back of the chair, sit tall, and we're going to rotate around to the other side such that you're looking at the back wall. And release. Thank you, everyone. That's it. Thank you for joining us for our stretch and strengthen exercise class, week number 4. I hope that was fun to do and not too difficult. So remember, this is our low impact, low intensity exercise class. We focus a lot on the amplitude aspect of things in terms of stretching, lengthening, but also strengthening at the same time. So if you are looking for something maybe a little bit more cardio specific, you are welcome to look at the Tuesday exercise class, which is our rock steady boxing class with Doug. So you can have a look at that Tuesday class if you're interested. In March, we have a Parkinson's movement class coming up. It hasn't been advertised on our website yet, but it will be on our website in the next week or so, next few weeks. So definitely sign up for that if you're interested. In April, we've got the April Challenger, which some of you might remember. This is our high intensity, high impact class. So the April Challenger mimics the PD Warrior syllabus, if anyone is interested. So that one is coming up in April. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. And I hope it was fun, and drink some water, have a rest. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you so much, everybody.